Due to some unfortunate shrinkage of the fabric in the washing machine, these shorts are quite tight and uncomfortable, as you can see. The snaps will easily come undone. Well, what do? I could have a knee-jerk reaction to the problem. Jump up and down, run around circles, bounce all over the room, take the shorts off, and jam them down the garbage disposal in the kitchen sink. Now, I don't have a garbage disposal, so that's not going to work. And besides, a reaction is not very nice. So, let's think of a proper response. Well, first of all, let's stop and think about how do I go about the response and what's required and what may work or may not work. So what I did was to drop everything and go out for a long walk in the rain late at night. Now, rest assured, I stayed dry. I put myself under a clear plastic drape and walked around while meditating. And here are the challenges. First of all, the waistband on these shorts has an elastic band in it, which means if I cut the waistband, the elastic band will scoot back in, and that's going to be a problem. I could try cutting the waistband off, but that's going to make an awful lot of work, because one of the requirements I'm going to impose upon myself is to try to make the job as quick and efficient as possible. Spend a lot of time thinking, but don't waste time in execution and don't waste materials. Also, what I do needs to be artistic and blend in with the artisanship that's within these garments as they are. So, let's think about somehow creating an extension, either in the sides or maybe the back, that blends in with the garment, yet keeps the integrity of the current waistband. So let's head on into the sewing room, and let's start on this journey. Okay, here we have the back of the shorts. We have some choices here. We could cut this line right open and make it like a V. Then create a larger V of fabric to make an extension. Is one possibility. I've done that on a previous pair of shorts, and I don't like to do things twice. So, what else can we do? And we need to be symmetrical. Well, can I cut an opening about here and another opening here, make a narrow V here and a narrow V here, and cut two identical pieces of fabric. They're about, say, 3 inches wider, to extend the V here and extend the V here. That might look a little bit nicer. We'll leave this intact and we'll leave the pockets intact. So, the first thing I have to do is to lock down the elastic band within. So when I cut the waistband, the elastic is not going to scoot back into the waistband and get lost. So let's do that first. What we have here is an industrial sewing machine. It works pretty fast and quite rugged. So the first thing we do, we're going to come over here. Now this is the first place we're going to make an insertion. Say 2 inches from the edge. We're going to stretch the rubber band, and we're going to make a stitch through the waistband like that. And we're going to come over and make another stitch about a ½ inch in. Something like this. We got 2 stitches across the waistband and the rubber band inside. We're going to repeat the same to the other side of the shorts, something like this. Going 2 inches in from the waist and from the side of the waist, which is where my finger is. Now I don't bother with rulers. It doesn't have to be exact. Because when somebody sees me from 10 feet away in the street, they're not going to notice any difference. So for expediency's sake, I just eyeball it. And that's okay. And there we go. So here we have the rubber band locked down here and the rubber band locked down here. So now we're ready to make the cuts. Here is the stitch I made through the waistband. I'm going to cut down the center of this line and then come out a little bit and then around and back. So we're going to create an opening in which I will stitch the extension piece of fabric. So it's going to do something like this. I'm going to first take a roller cutter, cut through the waistband and the elastic. That's okay because they've been stitched. It's not going to scoot back into the pants. So I'm going to cut down to about here. I don't want to go into the seam here, but I'm going to cut to where my finger is. And I have to be very careful to make sure the front side of the pants are not going to be in the way of the cutter. So it's going to be something like down like this, across, ups, and back. Something like that. It's not exact, but to the person in the street, I think will be fine. Now, we're going to repeat the same on the other side. Something like this. Let's make sure that's in the camera, and it is. Again, I'm going to cut through the waistband like that, and the elastic. We come down, around there, like that, and back up. So now we have the opening on this side and on that side. Now they're not exactly the same distance away from the seam, so we're just going to make a little adjustment here. Oops. Now, something like that. Okay, now the next step is to run these through the serger. And what we have here is an industrial serger. A serger is an overlock machine. It creates an overlock stitch to capture the threads or the fabric will not fray. Go ahead and put it under here. Now we're going to run it fairly slowly. It is normally a high-speed serger, but we're running through a lot of layers of heavy fabric, and if I'm not careful, the serger can jam and I'd have to completely re-thread it. And there's 5 different threads in the overlock machine, and I have to be very careful in going around curves, and I have to be exceptionally careful. Don't allow any folds or any additional fabric to go under the foot of the serger. So we're going to look something like this, and come back up. Now what this has done, I'm going to try to show you, is an overlock on the entire run of the opening. It is overlocked on both sides, so the edge is stitched in so it will not fray. Now we have to repeat the same thing on the other side. Thus again, we take the edge of the opening, put it under the foot of the serger, slowly run the machine. There's several layers of very thick upholstery fabric, so we have to take it very slowly and carefully and be very sensitive to any possible binding of the needle or the foot on the heavy fabric. So it's something like this. And there. Now we're done. Get that through the machine like that. Cut the end. At the other end, now we got 2 opening serge on the shorts. Now we have to do the extensions. So here we go. To add a little pizzazz, I decided to use purple. I made 2 extensions, one for each side. It is a 4-inch wide U at the top. Remember, we cut these right at about 1/2 inch, so we're going to extend these about 2 inches on each side. And of course, remember, we have a seam allowance for each side that will reduce the actual size, but still, I estimate a good 2 inches for each side, which allows a 4-inch extension to the waist of these shorts, which I feel should be enough. If it's not, what I'll do, then I'll go ahead and add another V in the rear. So, my next step is to stitch these into here for each side on the industrial sewing machine. Here we have the insert, and here's the gap I created. Now what I do is to start stitching in the center of the bottom. That way any effects of any mismatch or errors will be reduced. And we're going to use narrow, fairly narrow seam allowances, since this is a fairly tight turn. Now this is a very slow, iterative process of stitching, turning, stitching some more, turning. In fact, I'm going to shorten the stitch length a little bit to allow more flexibility in being able to turn the tight turns. Now, when you put together a curved seam, there is a process of ensuring that the length of the stitch on the inside of the curve on one piece is the same as the outside of the curve on the other piece. I did not bother doing that. I will just have to make up for that when I press the seam down. So it's not going to look nice on the inside, but I don't care. But that's 1/2 of the insert like that. Now I'm going to go to the other side, something like this. And this is where it gets a little tricky, because I'll be working against the force being pulled by the seam I've done. And I'm just going to have to pull the fabric over as I go up the other side. And there's so much fabric can go under the foot that I have to be very careful. I'm going to overlap by stitching on the area I've stitched already. Now I have to pull this around like so. So that it usually takes about twice as long to do the far side of the V, because I have to pull against the other side of the V, which is already stitched. The curved part is the most tedious part to sew on a job like this. It takes patience and willingness to accept that some of it's not going to be perfect. Now, when you're stitching, when you're making clothing or doing a repair like this, you have to constantly remind yourself that any small mistakes are okay, because who's going to see them when they look at you from 10 feet away on the street? If you keep that attitude, then you're much more willing to take risks of making mistakes and just leaving the mistakes in place. Now here we are at the end, and now I'm going to do the back stitch. Okay, now we've Now here's what it's going to look like, right here. See, that's the area that was stitched. Here's the front side. And now what I'm going to do is the top stitching. That's going to create the double seam. All my stitching is double seam for appearance and durability. So now I'm on the outside of the garment. I'm going to top stitch so that the seam presses inward in the V. Now I'm going to do a very narrow top stitch since the original seam allowance was quite small. If I do this too wide, I have a chance of missing the fold over on the other side. Now if I miss it for a little bit here and there, I don't care. As long as I get it stitched for the most part. Again, stitch, turn. Oops, I accidentally stopped this, did the end stitch, so I guess start again. And now we're starting a new run, so stitch. Now with this machine, it's a bit tricky. If I press too hard on the pedal going backwards to lift the foot, then it signals to the machine I'm end of the run, and then it does the back and forth and cuts the thread. That's what just happened. But now I have to be very careful when I push the foot, when I push the pedal backwards to lift the foot. It's a little bit like that. Stitch, lift, stitch, and now we're lift, turn, stitch. Now we're on the straight, the back stretch. So just a matter of stitching, keep going, pressing the seam allowance down like that, and we stop. Now watch what happens. When I reach the end, I press the foot backwards, all the way to the back and forth and ends. That's the feature of this machine. Now here you go. Here is the finished piece. Now I'm going to do is fold the excess backwards like this. Tuck that under the hem, the waist hem like this. I'm going to do a stitch, one stitch across like this. Hold that down. I'm going to go on the other side. Make sure that's held down. Now we come over here, stitch down the sides again, like this, to hold the flap down. Again on the other side. Okay, and we're done with this side. Now, I'm going to do the other side off camera. Well, there you have it. We're done. The fit is far, far more comfortable, even with a fairly heavy shirt tucked in. And as you can see, the patches on the sides are fairly symmetrical. And they're sturdy, and I think the colors pretty well blend in with the multiple colors of these shorts and this shirt. And most importantly, the job took about an hour total. I did the cutting and the serging last night. This morning I completed the sewing. And that's pretty much it. The most of the time was taken by the thinking and the problem solving, which I can apply next time I have a pair of shorts that's too small. I now have a working process. Considering the price of bicycle shorts that I've seen in the shops, they're about $80 to $150, maybe even $200 for a pair of shorts. I could consider that this hour's worth of work saved me $200, but these shorts will have another life. So there you have it. Till next time, till next emergency repair.